All right, so before we jump into talking about the accommodation advantage today, I just want to offer three quick disclaimers specific to this topic. The first is that as we frame accommodations today, we will be using the Americans with Disabilities Act as our framework and guidelines, but it is worth noting that several other pieces of accessibility legislation around the globe also have similar provisions, including the European Accessibility Act and the Accessible Canada Act, but we'll just be referring to the ADA specifically for today. Second item related to this topic is this is a very broad topic. We will be doing a kind of a top level overview type of review today. So should you find yourself wanting more information on any of the topics that we do touch on, such as ADA Title II, please feel free to visit our webinar archive and our YouTube channel, as we do have considerably more detailed information about some of these topics than what we're going to cover today. And then the last thing will be to say that we at Accessible Web are not legal experts. We are digital accessibility experts. And so should you have very specific questions, it's always best practice to consult a legal expert in your geographic region. All right, with all that said, I'm going to grab a quick drink and we'll jump right into our overview slide. So on our first slide up here, we'll just cover the topics that we'll be talking about today. The first is accessibility, accommodations, and the human experience. Next up, we have reasonable accommodations under the ADA, providing accommodations in practice, preparing to provide accommodations, responding to accommodation requests, real-world examples of accommodations, and what accommodations really mean for access. On our second slide, we are at accessibility, accommodations, and the human experience. So I will read out the slide content here. Accessibility is about people and lived experience. Digital spaces are still not designed with everyone in mind. Accommodations bridge the gap to inclusion. And I would invite you to hold these concepts in your mind as we get into some of the legal details and practical applications. So before we get into legal definitions and practical steps, I just want to set a little bit of context here. Accessibility and in turn accommodations are about people and lived experiences. This is about how individuals navigate digital spaces in the real world. Many digital environments are still not designed with a wide range of needs and abilities in mind. And when access is not built into the experience from the ground up, it shows up later as a barrier. Accommodations help bridge that gap so that people can complete tasks and access services even when barriers are present. So as we move into the legal framework and practical applications, kind of keep this in perspective in mind, because everything we cover here today is going to connect back to creating access in a world that's basically still catching up when it comes to accessibility. Moving on to our next slide now. All right, so now let's look at reasonable accommodations specifically under the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act. First up on the slide in this section, we will be addressing specifically Title II, state and local governments, and Title III, public-facing businesses. So specific to Title II, this includes all agencies and special districts within state and local governments, but I specifically want to call out school districts, K through 12 education, as well as publicly funded higher education institutions, because we're going to look at the education environment as one of our real world examples a little bit later on. So I specifically wanted to call those out. And then Title III, public facing businesses. This applies whether you do or do not have a physical brick and mortar location for your business. All right, second slide in this section. Reasonable accommodations under the ADA, there are three key provisions related to accommodations. The first of which is effective communication is required. Auxiliary aids and services that support communication, and reasonable modifications address barriers in policies and processes. So building forward from the human perspective, this is how the ADA frames accommodations in practice. So under both Title II and Title III, organizations are required to ensure effective communication. And that basically means that people with disabilities must be able to access information and interact with services in a way that works for them. To support effective communication, the law requires the use of auxiliary aids and services when needed. These are tools or formats that help make communications accessible, such as providing documents in accessible formats or adding captions to video content. And again, we're going to visit some specific examples later on to try and help make that a little bit more tangible. The ADA also requires reasonable modifications. This means making adjustments to policies, practices, or procedures when they explicitly create barriers. Taken together, these provisions are about making sure that when a barrier does arise, there is a timely way for a user to access information, complete tasks, and receive services. Slide 4. So providing accommodations in practice. So what does it look like sort of in an ideal world if an organization has applied these provisions? So this slide reads, accessibility and accommodations become part of everyday service. Responsibility for providing accommodations sits with the organization or business. Consistency is key in providing accommodations. Accessibility and accommodations are part of high quality customer service. So now that we've defined accommodations under the ADA, the next question is, what does it look like when an organization has implemented these practices? So in practice, accessibility and accommodations should be part of how services are delivered every day and not just something that comes up or is thought about when a barrier is reported. Just moving forward in my notes. Providing accommodations also means that the organization is taking responsibility for addressing barriers and reducing friction. So when something doesn't work or a barrier arises, it's incumbent upon the business or the organization to resolve it and not to leave it up to the user to figure out a workaround. Consistency is also important when providing accommodations. Accessibility should not depend on who responds to the barrier report or how someone reaches out. The experience should feel reliable each and every time. When these practices are in place, providing accommodations becomes part of high quality customer service. Accessibility and accommodations are not separate from the customer experience. They are, in fact, a core tenet of good customer service. So the next step is making sure that your teams are prepared to deliver on these providing accommodations in a consistent way. Slide 5. Next, preparing to provide accommodations. Slide reads, understand common accommodation types, train staff to respond effectively, create clear paths for support, and be flexible. So providing accommodations effectively starts with recognizing that barriers create the need for accommodations in the first place, and preparing teams through training and education is the best way to respond effectively. Start by looking at common types of accommodations and the barriers behind them. So for example, a form that doesn't work with a screen reader or a video that does not include captions. Recognizing and understanding these situations helps teams to respond more confidently. Training is what makes this possible. So the goal is to empower teams to respond effectively and efficiently so that they're not figuring things out in the moment. They should understand what tools and options are available to them and how to apply them. Clear paths for support are just as important. When someone reaches out, there should be a straightforward way to get help without confusion or delay. Flexibility also matters. Not every situation will look the same, so teams should be ready to adapt and adjust how support is provided as needed. When these pieces are in place, teams are ready to step in and address barriers as they arise. All right, moving on to our next slide, please. All right, this slide is responding to accommodation requests. It reads, listen and respond promptly. Let the user guide the solution. Follow through to completion. Share next steps for resolving the barrier, and acknowledge and value customer feedback. So when an accommodation request comes in, the goal is to help the person complete what they set out to do. Start by listening and responding promptly so the user knows that they have been heard. From there, let the user guide the solution. They know what works best for them in terms of accommodations, so your role is to support that need and not to override it. Follow through to completion. The interaction is not finished until the task is completed or the information or service has been successfully accessed. Share what happens next with the customer. Let the user know how the issue will be addressed and what steps are being taken to resolve the barrier. Finally, acknowledge their feedback. Thank them for taking the time and effort to reach out and report the issue or the barrier. Make it clear that their input is valued and will help improve the experience going forward. All right, slide number 7. We'll look at some real-world examples of accommodations. So on this slide, we are going to identify 3 different environments: state and local governments. We'll look at an example where forms or applications are not accessible to assistive technologies. We'll look at e-commerce space, where a user might be unable to complete a checkout due to inaccessible credit card information fields. And then we'll look at the education environment, where a student might be presented with instructional videos without captions or audio descriptions. So these examples show how accessibility barriers appear in different environments and how accommodations address them in the moment. So in state and local government, forms or applications may not work with assistive technology, such as a screen reader. An accommodation in this situation might involve providing the form in an accessible format or offering assistance in completing the form over the phone or through chat. In the e-commerce space, a user may not be able to complete a purchase because the checkout flow is not accessible to them. So support, again, might include assistance with the checkout, offering another path, such as doing it over the phone, or another way to complete the transaction. In an educational space, instructional videos might be missing captions or audio descriptions. So an accommodation in this situation might be to provide a transcript or other text-based description of what's happening visually. Additionally, you could provide live verbal description. A teacher or an instructional assistant could provide live verbal description of what's going on so that the materials can be fully understood in the moment. So each situation follows the same pattern. A barrier appears and accommodation allows the task to be completed. So these adjustments are often fairly simple, but they can determine whether someone is able to complete a task or needs to abandon it altogether. Last up here, we have slide number 8, and this is what accommodations really mean for access. The items here, I'll read through them quickly, is accommodations provide equitable access, not extras or favors. Accommodations are needed because barriers are still present. Barrier reports can drive inclusion and improvements in systems, policies, and practices. And accessibility by default is always the goal. So as we wrap up, I just want to bring back a few key ideas here to keep in mind. The first is that accommodations are about equitable access. This is an important area where there can be some misunderstanding. Accommodations are not extras, favors, or special treatment. They ensure that individuals with disabilities can access products, information, and services on equal footing. The need for accommodations points to a larger issue. Many systems, including digital ones, are still not designed with the full range of user experiences in mind. Barrier reports and accommodation requests are valuable. They highlight where systems, policies, and practices are not working. Barrier reports and resulting accommodation requests are a super opportunity to close a gap in these systems over time. These moments build towards experiences that work better for everyone. And accessibility by default is always the goal. Accommodations bridge the gap while progress is being made. And that wraps up our presentation for today. And I'll hand it off to you if you want to cover how accessible web can help, and then we will open it up to questions. Hello, are you guys still there?
Hey, Heather, I'll step in. I don't think Gianna is here at the moment. It's Ben.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry
Awesome.
about that.
So I'll run through this slide. So how accessible web can help. So first of all, we have our software, our suite of tools, including Ramp, which we are currently in the works on releasing a feature that allows us to scan your sites that are behind a login. So if you're interested in that, definitely let us know, and we can try and get that set up for you. Additionally, we run accessibility audits. So in addition to automated scanning, which can catch about 25–30% of actual WCAG related issues, we run manual audits, which will catch the rest. And we offer best practices in addition to that. So not only WCAG 2.2 AA conforming, or rather tasks that'll get you to that point, but also best practices. We offer consulting and training, so we have our professionals here who can provide help in getting your answers met and or getting your questions answered rather, and also some training courses. And in addition to all of that, if you have any clients that are looking for VPATs, voluntary product accessibility templates, we are happy to fill those out upon the completion of a manual audit when we have all the information that we need.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Heather.